All right, hello everybody. I'm back. Sorry about that. I know I said I'd try to be early every day and off to a bad start, but that's okay. But we've got plenty of time here. I just want to check my microphone real quick. I should be sounding way better. Yeah, howdy to you too. So for those of you who didn't see, yeah, thanks. Who didn't see, I was using my webcam microphone yesterday. That was totally my bad. I have a much nicer microphone, so the sound quality should be much better. And when I yell and get excited, I shouldn't be like pushing on, I don't know, the decibel limit, I guess. So let's talk about a few things. So for one, we'll kind of go to CS202 here, just our section. And I just want to show you that things have been updated. So after every class, I'll come in here to the class code and I'll upload that folder there. Let me fix this. So you'll see here that we've got this folder, and if you come in here, you'll see that I've got the code that we did, the notes that we did, and I uploaded that fun little picture. RCS asks, are office hours today? I think this is the only day that we do not have scheduled office hours. But you're welcome to send me messages. I will be kind of MIA for about 4 hours after class today. I'll be unavailable. But after that, if you want to send me Discord messages, I will respond to you. And if you want to come talk to me, tomorrow is a much better day. Just send me a message or office hours. I listed them on the syllabus. So I made some big updates here. You'll see here that I've got my office hours here. And you'll see that I've got Christine's office hours here as well. So you can come check those out. I listed her email as well. And you can always find her in the Discord. In addition to that, I added the final exam date. It's during class time, okay? So whatever that Friday is, the 9th, that's when we'll have the final exam. And then I made an update to the Discord link, but I think everyone's in there. If you're not in the Discord, just let me know. Send an email, let me know in the chat, and I can try to help you out with that. So that's all good. Today, I'm going to start out by going over the assignment. I'll show you one more time. July 9th. Here. Yeah, so that's, you can't see my calendar, but that's in about a month. That's the very last day of class. I just got a message here from a student who wants to connect. And it seems that they can't, so I'm going to send them the link real quick. Hopefully they'll be able to get in here. Okay. So there's that. Today I'm going to go over the assignment. That's what I'm going to start with. Yeah, not June 9th. Midterm 1, let me get back to you on that, okay? So I kind of wanted people to send me some conflicts if they had any before I schedule that. So give me a few, just maybe a day or two here. If any of you have conflicts, please email me sooner than later. And then I will schedule that midterm 1 and let you guys know as soon as I can. So we're going to go over the assignments. The assignment real quick. I'm just going to kind of talk about what you're doing. And then for those of you, I know plenty of you have gotten started, which I'm super happy about. But I know some of you may not have used vectors before, and there's some things that might not have sunk in from CS 135. So today I'm going to do kind of a live example of something that you could use to help you complete the homework. And if we finish that up today, then we're going to get started on our first subject, which will be classes and data abstraction. If at any point you guys have any questions, please just let me know. And before any of that, I'm going to black out my screen real quick and just make sure that I've closed everything that I need to close. Because sometimes I've made mistakes before, and I definitely don't want to do that. All right, so we've got the assignment. Got that pulled up. Don't need Steam today. And that is disconnected. All right, so we're good to go. All right, so here's our assignment. All assignments this semester, as I said, are made by me. I like to think I'm pretty good at making assignments. I try to make sure there's no errors at all. But like I said, I'm not perfect. So, you know, if you ever come across something that doesn't make sense, please let me know. This is kind of a huge text document, but I just try to be as descriptive as I can. The best way, or the way I like to think that I make these, is that you can kind of just read it, and as you go along, you can kind of just type in the functions one at a time. So what you're doing with this is you're completely reviewing your kind of CS135 material. So you're probably going to practice using all of these things. Today I'm going to go over file operations. We'll probably do some for loops, some while loops, some if statements. We'll even do a switch statement, which I'm sure some of you don't know about yet. I'll be working with the vectors today. I know there was a question about that in the Discord. I said I'd do files. We're going to do functions. So we're going to kind of go over all of this today. As I said before, the assignments are kind of large. They're larger than they are in CS135, but I assure you, if you just sit down and work on them, you can complete most of them within a few hours. And that's dependent on your knowledge and your confidence, of course. If you're struggling, you know, always let us know so that we can help you get going on that. So what we're going to be doing in this assignment is we're going to be reading in a CSV file. That's a comma separated values. So what does that look like? Well, I'll show you. This is the one that we're going to have fun with today. I don't need that volume there. Okay. So let me even pull up the exact data that you're going to be reading in for assignment 1. So we've got, I'm going to pull open the events small file here, but what this is an Excel spreadsheet. Some of you might have Excel installed on your computer, and if you do, your computer might want to open up this file as an Excel sheet. But what this actually is it's a text file, okay? It's a text file. And every column is separated with a comma. So that's what CSV stands for, comma separated values. And so just treat it like it's a text file, okay? You don't have to treat it like it's anything else. Sorry, you might get a little feedback there. I was just pulling open my moderator review. So this is what it is, and these are Olympic events, okay? I pulled this off the internet. I can zoom in here a little bit so you can see kind of what's going on. So up here are the column names. So you've got their name, their sex, their age, their height, weight, what team they were on, what the games were, where the city was, or what the city is, what the sport was, what the event was, and if they medaled, did they get one. So every line corresponds to one event. So in this case, this is event number 1. That's not chronological. This is just kind of a distinct identifier. But you can see this is the athlete's name. They were male, 24 years old. They were 180 centimeters tall, 80 kilograms heavy. Okay? So you're just going to read in each of these lines. You're going to store them, and you're going to put it in a vector. Arceus asks, are we using only one vector to store the entire CSV? That is correct. And it will work. It might take a while. It might take a little bit because the bigger file has, I think it's 36 megabytes. It'll take a moment to read in the whole thing. So I would definitely recommend doing with this or working with this event small to start. So today I'm going to be working with this swimming events thing. I was a swimmer for UNLV. Just a small little brag, I guess. I'm proud of it. I swam here from 2014 to 2019. And so I'm kind of a swim nerd. Okay, so today's example, we're going to be looking at some swimming world records. This is a CSV file. I'm happy to see you play water polo. That's one of the hardest sports there are. And so today I'm going to be reading these in and kind of storing them, just like we would in the assignment. So once we read all of that data into memory, we're going to kind of query the database. You may not have heard that before. All that means is we're going to store all of the data into a vector. That'll be our database. And then we can kind of ask questions, right? So the menu of our assignment asks us something like, find the max height of the Olympic events. And so then we'll go through the database and find the event that had the person with the max height, something like that. Or so that's the tallest competitor. So we're going to query the database. We're going to ask it some questions, and you're going to write the code that will go find that stuff in the database. So there's only one file. This is a skeleton code. I don't know if you guys did skeleton codes yet, but that's a big thing in this class. Usually I will provide you with the CPP file, and there will already be some code in there. So let me show you what that looks like on this assignment. All right, and look, I even put this in here. I want you to put your name here. This was in the syllabus, right? I kind of gave it to you already. You just have to fill in that stuff. And you can see I've already included all of the libraries you're going to need. If you guys like string streams, that's a library I'm okay with. So if you want to bring in string stream, I think, I'm totally welcome for that as well. But I don't usually use those. It might be SS stream. Obviously, I don't know exactly what I'm doing with the string streams, so if you know how to use them, you're welcome to, but I will not be using them today. And then look, I kind of include this comment here, and it just tells you what all of the column names are. I kind of already went over that, right? Arceus asks, what's a string stream? Maybe we'll cover it sometime, but do you know this here is an F stream? That stands for file stream. And so whenever you do something that's like, so cout is considered a stream, and cn is also considered a stream. And with streams, you can kind of you can extract, and you can insert stuff into them. So this is when you're extracting from the stream. This is when you're inserting to a stream. And so cout and cin are out streams and in streams. An IF stream, we'll go over that today, is an in file stream. An OF stream is an out file stream. If you use string streams, you can do these operations on, say, a string. Like I said, I'm not going to go over it, but it's almost exactly like using cin and cout, but with strings. I'm kind of getting... I don't want to confuse anyone who's never seen that stuff before, so don't worry. I'm just trying to answer you guys' question. So Arceus asked, OF stream is used to write to a file. That's correct. And we'll just go over kind of some file operations today anyway. So here you see a struct Now you guys should have seen structs before. This is what we're going to use to store an Olympic event. Okay, so in here is this is the Olympic event, and we're gonna read in a line, and we're gonna pull out each of these fields. That's what they're called. This is a field, or a column if you'd prefer, and we're gonna store them into that struct. And then every time we read in all of the data to a struct, then we'll add that struct to our database. So I already have the Olympic event struct for you. And then here are all the functions that are included for this assignment. Now you only have to do 7 of them. Here's main. All main does is it does the menu for you. So you actually don't have to do main at all. You can read it if you'd like, but pretty much every function that you're coding is called from main. Now I did 2 functions already for you. One is the menu, print menu. And what does that do? Well, that prints the menus. It will also check the input. And if the input is okay, then it will return that value to main. So you actually don't have to worry about this function at all. And you also don't have to worry about this display event function. Though you will call this function. All this function does is it takes in one struct, it takes in the Olympic event, and it will print out everything that's in there, as you can see here. And then finally, we move on to the functions that you have to code, okay? So the very first one I recommend you start with, and the one that we'll do in class today, roughly, is the read file function. Cherry's got a good question there, and I'll see if I can address that in just a moment when we get started. And maybe we can address that. But this is the one I recommend you start with. We'll do an example of that today. You can find exactly what you're supposed to do in the assignment here, right? So I explained to you what the 3 functions I wrote do, and then here's the read file, okay? This one's kind of the biggest. I'm trying to be descriptive. So if you kind of just read this whole thing, hopefully you'll get an idea of what you're supposed to do. And then you can move on to the next functions, okay? So all you have to do is kind of scroll through here. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. And so on and so forth. Today we'll cover a sorting algorithm for those of you who haven't coded a sort before. And so wherever it says your code here, you'll just put some code. This code compiles, okay? So you can upload it and compile it right away. It'll work. So as you start to type in your code, if you get any errors, you can kind of work backwards from your errors. So that's all of that stuff. Do you guys have any questions? I mean, aside from actual problems that you've had starting the assignment, just about what you're supposed to do, what you'll need. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. So you have until Saturday, or Sunday night if you would prefer the late deadline, though I wouldn't recommend it, to do this one. I tell you that you can log into Bobby or Sally and compile it using this, and to run your code you use that. At the end, I always ask you guys to answer some questions. This is to prove to me that you kind of know what you're talking about. These first 3 questions talk about just how, you just run the code and answer these questions, basically. And then this one, I ask for some critical thinking skills. Just put your answers in some text file, and your answers can be very short, okay? I don't really care about typos or grammatical errors. I'm not a big stickler on that stuff, okay? So please keep your answers short. Just prove to me that you did the assignment and you kind of know what you're talking about there. And then I tell you how to submit it. So please let me know if you have any questions about that. Otherwise, we're going to get started today on reading this in. If you would like to use a Word document, I'm totally okay with that as well. If you want to make it a PDF, that's fine. As long as it's somewhere that I can see it. It's its own file, and it's not hidden somewhere in your comments. So today I'm going to make my little folder just so I can keep track of all the stuff that we've done. Today is the 8th, and we're still working on our CS135 stuff. In here, I'm going to make myself a new CPP file. I always say new text document, and we'll call it swimming.cpp. So now I'll pull it over here. And I'm always going to repeat stuff, okay? I won't always ask you to help me out, but just for those of you who need to see it over and over again, that's kind of what I like to do. So I'm going to pull open some notes as well. And we're going to start with a few things today. Before I get there, let's do everything that we've already known, that we already went over yesterday. For one, let's include all of our libraries that we're familiar with. For this assignment, we're going to be using quite a few. We're going to be using the vector library. We're going to be using the fstream library for files. And then I always like to bring in string because this has a nice function called toString, just in case we need it. Now, don't ever forget to include this unless you want to type std in front of all of your couts and cins. And then we're going to have an int main here where we're going to return 0 somewhere at the end. Now, just like the assignment, the first function I recommend you start with is the read file. We're going to be reading into a vector of structs. So let's come in here and figure out what our struct is going to be. So here we have all of the elements from our CSV file. So I'm going to put these in a comment. In case you guys don't remember how to do a block comment, it's this /*, and then down here at the bottom, you'll do a */ to close it. Now the event name is probably going to be a string. The distance is probably going to be an int. The stroke will be a string. The metric, I believe, will be a string as well. The metric is either meters or yards. So that's a string. A long course, I've stored it as a string here, true or false, but I will call it a bool. Now, in case you guys don't know anything about swimming, I'm going to give you a quick lesson here. As I said, I don't know how many swimming competitions you've seen, but in the world there are 3 different competition pools. So everywhere in the world, people use meters, right? Except for America. For some reason, we like yards. So if you're in college swimming or high school swimming, we use the 25-yard pool. Now, everywhere else, there's 25-meter pools. And then when the Olympics comes around, which it's coming up, I'm so excited, they jump up to this big, scary 50-meter pool. So when I say, is it long course, that means, is it 50 meters? Or is it short course, meaning it's 25 meters or yards? So that's a bool. Men and women, let's store that as a character for fun. And then the world record, whatever the time is, we're going to store that as a float. Right? So you guys should all be familiar with these data types. So let's go ahead and make our struct. So to declare a struct, we type struct, and we're going to give it a name, right? In this case, it's going to be our swimming event. And we always have to end our structs with a semicolon. So don't ever forget to do that. Otherwise, you'll get some weird compiler errors. And now we'll go ahead and get started on some of the stuff we need. For our strings, we want the event name. We would also like the stroke. I guess I'm capitalizing these things. We're also going to want the metric. And that's about it. Now we're going to have a bool for the long course. We're going to have a character for men, women. I'll call it just MW. We're going to have a float for the world record. I'll call it WR. And then we're going to have an int for the distance. So that'll be int distance. Okay. Now let's kind of refresh our struct skills. If I want to access something within this struct, so now this is a data type, right? Hopefully you remember. So just like we could declare an int variable, we can also declare a swimming event variable. Swimming event SW. Now, does anyone remember, if I want to access one of these are fields, is what we'll call them, or members. If I want to access a member inside of this event, what do I do? Right, Arceus says the dot operator, right? What does the dot operator look like? Well, it's a dot. And Synchro got it right. He said swimming event dot event. So let's say if I wanted to change the name of this, I would say SW, and look, there they all are. Thank you, IntelliSense. If I want to change the event name, that's a string. I could say, hey, this is the 100-meter freestyle. Something like that. So that's how we're going to access stuff within our struct. So the very first thing we're going to do is we are going to read in our file, right? So let's go ahead and get started on that. Now, I'm going to make a function for it. It's going to be the exact same as in your assignment. And we're going to return a vector of swimming events. So the function is going to return a vector of swimming events. So that's going to be the return type. And I'm going to call it read file. And remember, does anyone know what this one's called? If I'm going to just put, I don't want to give it away. If I'm just going to put this up here, and then somewhere down here, I'm going to actually put the body of this function. Does anyone know what this is called? A prototype. That's exactly right. This is the function prototype. Right, so whenever I refer to the prototype, I'm just talking about, like in your tests, for example, I'll say, write the function prototype for this. That doesn't mean write the function, it just means write this. Write this, kind of the function header, right? Now the read file takes in a string file name. That's what I'm going to say. This is its parameter. And so I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to bring that down here. So now we'll begin with some notes, just so you have them for those of us before who have not used files before. So we're going to start with some file operations, or just file stuff in general. So if I want an in file, we're going to call it an IF stream file. Okay, that's how we declare it. If we want an out file, that's going to be an OF stream file. Okay? So we're going to read something in here. So let me make my IF stream. Here it is, and I'll call it F. And that's our in file, right? So the next thing I want to do is open it. Does anyone remember how I do that? Now, there's two ways to do it. I know that you guys probably, some of you guys may know both. But if I have file here, how would I open it? Infile.open, that's exactly right. Arceus is getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. Z got it, right? Codamax got it. We're going to do file.open. And then in here is some string. Now you could pass in just, this is a character array, but as long as you pass in a string or a character array, my file. No, you're all good. You're all good. I'm so happy that you guys participate. You make my day. If we want to close this, we're going to close that file just like that. Now, you guys might not think this is very important. It's a very easy thing to miss. But have you ever tried to move a file out of a folder and it says, I can't do this because it's open somewhere? Well, if you happen to forget to close your files, they'll be perpetually in that state. So if you ever write a program and forget to close your file, and then after the program ends, well, the program will still be running most likely. But then if you try to move that file, Windows will be like, this is open and you can't move this. So it's always good to remember to close your files. Yeah, exactly. So always remember to do that. And now there's a few other things that I want to talk about. There's a bunch of folder operations. There's a bunch of folder functions. I'll show you where you can reference that. If you ever care about that, I'll always pull it up here. If you ever want to see everything that you can do with an in file, you can just come to Google and type ifstream C++. Now, an ifstream is a class, okay? It's a class. We haven't gone over classes yet, but it has a bunch of stuff in it. So you can always call some stuff. So look at this. Look at the member functions here. You can call open. You can use this function, which we'll talk about. You can close it. And that's kind of got this operator thing down here. It also has a bunch of stuff up here like getLine and stuff like that. So if you ever want to see everything that you can do with an if stream, you can come in here and look at it. Now the few we're going to talk about is open. We're going to talk about getLine. We're going to talk about the extraction operator. So if I want to check to see if the file is open, which is something we should always do, we can just say if file.isOpen, and then we'll put some brackets here, and in here we'll have some code, right? So that's kind of what that'll look like. That returns a bool, right? IsOpen returns a boolean, either true or false. This is what it's going to be. And if we want to read from the file, we have a few options. The ones that I will use today is just getLine. But you have a bunch of options. One of the main ones is you can say you have a string G. You can read into G from the file by using the extraction operator, right? This will grab probably a word. Likely, it will stop on a space. It'll stop on an end line, stuff like that. Now, my favorite one always is getLine. getLine is probably the easiest one to use in my opinion, and you can do it in two different ways. So the most straightforward way to use a getLine, and let's talk about that real quick. I'm actually going to black out my screen for just a moment, because I'm going to show you a cool program called Notepad++. But I want to make sure I don't have any proprietary information in there that I show you guys by accident. It looks like we're good. So this is Notepad++. I can't really zoom in the upper part, but I can zoom in on this. Now, if you have Notepad++, if you go to View, and then go to Show Symbols and show all characters, you're going to be able to see every single character there ever was in some file. So, for example, I'm going to open up this swimming events file here. Now, do you guys see this CRLF thing? Can anyone tell me what that character represents? It's a pretty easy guess, I would say, but in Notepad++, it's kind of putting like an actual symbol there for us to see it. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's a new line. Now, in Linux environments, new lines are represented. Does anyone know what a... Yeah, so lethargy actually got it 100% correct. So I'll kind of explain this real quick. In Linux environments, I'm not going to do it here because it's nasty. In a Linux environment, a new line is represented as this character. It's a \n. In Windows environments, they said, hey, that's not cool. I want to do a /r/n instead. So that's something to keep in mind. Bobby is a Linux environment, right? So everything that's a new line is represented with this /n. But that's in the Windows environments, you'll see the CR thing here. That's the carriage return, and then there's the line feed. So you can see that all of these lines are separated with 2 characters. So in getLine, it almost treats the file as if it's a big string. And when you say getLine, it's going to separate, it's going to grab one line out of the file, separating on that \n character, on that line feed. So what the getLine does is it's going to take in the file, and then it's going to store whatever is in the string. So it reads one line from file into G. Now, some of you may have learned this one before. You can pick what the delimiter is. Synchro asks, /r is the carriage return. That is correct. And /n is the LF. Yep, that's correct. You can tell in here. So if I put something in the string, you'll notice that it has kind of this default orange color. Let me like do a super zoom on it. So you guys should really be able to see that there. And if you do a \r, you'll notice it's kind of this different character or this different color. And that just means that these 2 things together are one character. So /r is something, /n is this. Does anyone know what the /t is? Take a guess. Any guess will do. It's a tab. That's exactly right. That's a tab. So let me get back to my notes here. So you can actually provide the delimiter to it if you want. So if you want to store the G, and if you provide a character, for example, comma, it will only read up to the comma. So let me just give you kind of an example of that here. So if I call getLine, so let's say I'm in this file and I call getLine just this one. What it's going to do is it's going to take this line, this whole thing, up until the end line, and it's going to store it into G. If I call this one, notice I provided a comma here. Notice I provided a comma. If I call that, it's actually going to read up to the very first comma right here. And then it will store that into G. So you have some options. Today I will be doing just the normal getLine. Be doing my favorite here. It's almost like this. If you have the file, the string, and then if you actually provided the /n, that's how this top one works. By default. That's how this top one works by default. All right, so let's get started. So I'm going to open my file, right? I'm going to say fopen, and we're going to pass in that file name. For vector swimming event, does it have to go before the function, or can it go anywhere? So this, if you remember, really any function, let's do like, for example, int count events, we're telling the function, or we're telling the compiler what the function returns. So in this case, whenever I call read file, it's going to return this value. it's going to return one of these. If I determined that this function was an int, it means it's going to return an int. So whenever you're doing a function, there always has to be some type here. You always are required to put some type there. So in the case of your question, yes, it has to go here to tell you what it returns. Synchro asks, prototypes can go anywhere as long as you create a function header. I would say yes. The main thing is the prototype always has to appear before it's called. So for example, if I didn't put it here, and then somewhere in here I said, for example, I'm making a vector of swimming events here, right? If I said is equal to the read file, some string, and I'll put the string in there in just a moment. If I said this, the compiler would cry because it doesn't know what this is yet. So as long as the prototype goes above wherever it's first called, then it's good to go. So I hope that answers that question. So from this function, we're going to return one of these things. So I'm actually going to have this variable up here. This is the return variable. So I'm going to declare our returning variable. I'm going to declare a file, and then I'm going to open that file. Now I want to check to see if the file is open, right? I kind of gave that to you here in the notes. Woo! Where am I going here? There it is. And what did I say? This is what we need to do to check to see if the file is open. I could even just copy it here and paste it there. Wow, it worked. So there it is. But in this case, I called it an F, right? So if F is open, so we'll say, hey, if the file is open, then we're going to do some code in here. Else, if the file is not open, I'm going to print an error. I'm going to say, hey, the file is not open. That's me printing my error message. And then down here at the bottom of the function, this is returning a vector of swimming events. So I'm just going to return the events in whatever state they are. Right? So this is how your assignment works. This is how I want it done. So this could be empty or not, depending on whether or not we open that file, right? And if we didn't open, I'm going to complain, but I'm still going to return this vector of empty events. So now begins the meat of the function, okay? Now begins the meat. This is really the biggest part, so please pay attention. I'm going to do it my way, okay? And you're completely welcome to copy my way in the assignment. I won't mark you for, I guess, in lighter terms, plagiarism, right? If you kind of copy this code for code, I totally won't be mad. So just so you know, that's okay with me. This is just to help you kind of get started, right? And you can always come back and reference this if you'd like. So I'm going to do it my way, as I said. And the first thing I want is some string, right? This is going to be our temp string. And what do I use this for? I'm going to use this to store lines from the file. Let me format my code because I love to make it look pretty. So that's the first thing I need. Now the reason I want that is because notice when I'm reading from the file, I need like this string G so that I can put stuff in it, right? Am I gonna call getLine or am I gonna call the extraction operator? What are we gonna do here? Well, I'm gonna call getLine. Now notice that the first line in this CSV file are the headers. I don't really care about the headers. And actually, is Cherry here? I think you are, right? I think you posted a question in the Discord, and I think I just figured out what your problem might be. Yeah, I think that was you when you were getting an STOI conversion error, right? And for those of you who don't know what STOI is, I will tell you. Z's talking about this ignore thing. We'll go over that a little later. That's always good to do for sure. But what I think might be happening with you... Oh, the blank line. Okay, so Z fixed it there. Oh, right. Okay. I see. You know what that might be is... Well, I won't say anything yet. But the thing that you guys should do is that you should read this line out, okay? I don't want you to store this header in the struct, right? So if you just call getLine once, it's going to be on the file. We're going to store it into temp. This will take out the header. Now, I usually don't have problems with this. I usually do ignore 40. Either Z or Cherry, where would you have me put that ignore? I assume it would be f.ignore. And then you would say 100 here. And then /n. Would you say it goes here, or would you say it goes after that get line? Okay, so this will hopefully save you guys from blank spaces. Really? Before? Oh, she didn't use the ignore. Okay. I think Z's right. I think it goes before. Right. That's correct. So you guys should be able to do this one here if you'd like to be safe. I'll leave it here in a comment just to show you that you might not always need it. But sometimes in your program, you'll see me do this in the main function, actually. Let me show you that. So this is the assignment. If you go up here in main, you'll see that I do an ignore somewhere. That's the function. Where's my first ignore? You can see here I do an ignore. And what that does is it prevents kind of this blank space from being read in. And you might get kind of an infinite loop. So if you're ever in this case, this kind of prevents infinite reads. So you might see that somewhere. Anyway, we'll continue on here. So now that I've read the first line, now I want to read until the end of the file. Now this is my favorite way to do this. I use a while loop, and I can actually put the get line in here. So what this does is, I'll give you some comments here. If a line is successfully read, in a sense it returns true. And notice that the line will be stored within this temp variable. If a line is not read, aka that means that we're at the end of the file, right? That's end of file. In a sense, it returns false. So this reads until the end of the file. This will always read until the end of the file. So if we read a line, we'll return true here, and now we've got temp, right? We could even see out temp just for now. Now this is called debugging. This is what I'm doing, debugging. If you ever get an STOI conversion and stuff like that, like a conversion error, maybe try printing it out to see what it is. And so now, what did we grab? Well, let's go ahead and run this code for now. Let's see how we did. So I'm going to pull up my favorite server here, good old Bobby. I'm going to go to my favorite directory, my test directory. I'm going to clear off this terminal because I don't like it. I'm going to go find wherever my file is located. Here it is. I called it swimming.cpp. I also need that CSV file, right? If I want to read in that file, I need to provide it. That's a requirement. So I'm going to pass in my swimming events.csv over here. Now there's a whole bunch of stuff in this directory. Let me go ahead and just remove it because we don't need it. Say goodbye, everybody. And now if I hit ls, you'll see here that I've got my swimming file and I've got my input file. So I'm going to try to compile it. I'm going to go find my last compile statement. Type in swimming here. Looks like we got some errors. Well, that's fine. What did our error say? It says expected unqualified token. Well, the reason for that is I didn't give this a name, right? So there we go. Now let's go ahead and try that again. Now, for those of you, this is your first time using MOBA, this will be a little bit tedious, dragging and dropping, but I assure you it's not the worst thing in the world. So now we compiled, so it's ./a.out. And of course it won't work yet, so let's try to see in our file name. So let's do a little message here that says, hey, what is the file? A little print message. And then I'm going to see in to that F name, right? Remember that cin takes from the terminal. And then once we read into that F name, we're going to pass that string into here. For those of you who want to know what the F name looks like, I'll print it out right here. And we'll see how we did. Let's do a ton of print statements. Let's say, hey, cout file opened. Right? Else it'll say, hey, the file is not open. And if we successfully open that file, we should see every line as we read until the end of the file. So finally, I'll pull over swimming one more time. We'll do a nice compile statement once it finishes loading in here. And then we'll ./a.out. What is our file name? Well, I named it this, swimming.cpp. Not CPP, swimming events.csv. And we got a bunch of output, right? You can see here that we successfully opened our file. And then every time we grab some line and we print it out. First we grabbed this line and printed it. Then we grabbed this line and we printed it. Then we grabbed this line and then we printed it. So far, things have gone well. Notice that the very last line is the women's 100-meter breaststroke. And that one was the very last line in the file. And then that while loop there exited. It said, I didn't get any more lines. So now it's done. So we know we're getting the line. So now is the next step. And that next step will be to read each of these fields out of the string. So we have to do a little bit of, this is called parsing. This is kind of string processing. So let's see how we might do something like this. So the first thing I'm going to make is, let's see. Yes, RCS, you nailed that, right? We're going to parse the file. So I'm going to make a string. I call this my builder string. I'm going to use this to build the fields. So this is kind of how I like to do it, okay? So pretend that our builder string, it's going to start out like this. It's going to start out as an empty string. And then I'm going to kind of go through each character one by one. Recall that our first line here is going to be this one. Here it is. This is our big string. And so as I start building it, I'm going to start from empty, and then I'm going to go M, and then the next thing I'm going to go ME, and then I'm going to go MEN, and then I'm going to go here. And so I'm going to kind of build this one by one. Can anyone tell me when I should stop? What would we be checking for when we know that we're done with the builder string? We're going to be looking for that comma, right? Exactly. So that thing right there, whenever we see one of those, we're going to say, hey, I'm done, and I'm ready to be stored inside of the struct. I'm ready to be stored inside the struct. Codemax, or Flyer, is 100% right as well. There will not be an end line here, okay? The get line strips that off, but we also have to check to see if we're at the end. So Flyer, I'm so glad you said that. That's 100% correct. So we'll be looking for the comma, and we're going to be looking for when we're at the very end of our string. So let's get started on that. I'm going to use a for loop, okay? You ready for the for loops? Here we go. So I'm going to say for int I is equal to 0. That's where we'll start. And I'll say I is less than the length of temp, right? Temp is stored here. However long that string is, I want to go until the very end of it. So I'll put it here. Then I'll say I++. And then we'll put some if statements in here. So the first one we'll check for is actually if it's, we're going to check to see if not comma, just if it's not a comma. Okay. So if we're going to index that string, recall that we use the brackets. And I'm going to say, hey, is this character in here, right? So we're either going to be looking at the M or the E or the N or the 5 or the comma. If you are not equal to a comma, let's add it to the builder string. Can anyone tell me what I'm doing here? Or what's the term for a string when we add something to it? So I'm going to say builder string is equal to what it was plus this new character that we know is not a comma. What is this called? Concatenate, right? That's concatenating. I'm okay with append too, but the real term for that is concatenation, right? So we're going to concatenate M with empty string, and then we're going to concatenate E with M, and then we're going to concatenate N with ME, and then we'll concatenate 5 with MEN. So that's what this is doing. We're going to add on character by character. Now, yes, Ali, you're completely correct. For those of you who don't know, I like to do this one instead. This one looks a lot nicer. I'm just making sure that everyone knows what this means. How about if you're in the chat and you do not know what this means, please tell me. Okay, so I can spend some time with you, or I can tell you exactly what it's doing. But in a sense, it's doing exactly that, right? It's taking whatever the builder string was, and it's adding a character to it. Concatenating a character to it, rather. Now, the I++ will get handled, so we don't have to worry about that. Now we're going to check for, as Flyer said, and as many of you other people said, the comma and the end line. So I can check for the comma. Can anyone tell me what the statement is if I know that I'm going to be at the end of the string? That's okay if you did yours the long way. We all will learn to code someday. And I assure you, if I could show you some of my programs from back in the day, it would take us days to go through them. So no worries there. How do I know if I'm at the end of the string? So I'm working with this I thing, right? So synchro says the /n, right? Now, I hate to burst your bubble, but the get line will actually strip it off. The get line will actually strip it off, and so it actually comes out to be like this. And so the easiest way we can check for that is I, if it's equal to the length of the string minus 1. Does that confuse anybody? Please tell me if it does. So Ali asks, would else be okay? Now, I'll tell you why I didn't use the else, and the reason for that is this statement here. Because I still would like to add the very last part of the string here. So if I is equal to temp length minus 1, then we're going to be sitting on this 1. We're going to be sitting on that 1 right there. And I still want to make sure it gets added to the string. So I am going to do an if check here. And it's specifically for this. But if we weren't checking for that, then absolutely you're right. Since it's either does not equal comma or equal to comma, the else could fit in there somewhere. So if we're in here, what does this say? If we're on a comma or at end of string, we're going to add to the struct. So whatever it is, we're going to add it to the struct. Yeah. Lethargy, that's correct. So what I'm going to give these is I'm actually going to give these index values. Now, has anyone used switch statements before? I won't blame you if you haven't. They're kind of like case statements in other programming languages. And a switch, yeah, a switch is kind of like if you're going to go if you're going to say if this, if this, if this, if this, if this. So that's what we're going to use a switch statement for. So notice up here that I've got kind of these indexes. I'm going to have an integer for that index. So wherever I do my builder string, I'm also going to put something here that says int index. I'm going to start it at 0. So now I'll do my switch statement here. And if you recall, a switch will take in some variable, right? A switch takes in some variable. In this case, it's going to be the index, right? It's going to be this index up here. And now I'm going to do a bunch of cases. How many indexes do I have? Well, I have 7 of them, 0 through 6. So I'm going to add all of my cases here. And I'll explain to you what that break does in just a moment. Five, 6. Case 1, if it's a case 1, if it's a case 2, if it's a case 3, if it's a case 4, if it's a 5, maybe I missed one here, or if it's a 6. Now the break, I'll tell you what the break does in a switch statement. So let's say this is equal to 0. It will come in here and it will say case when index is equal to 0. And then it will execute whatever code is in here. If you do not put this break statement here, it will actually move on to the next one. And it will say, hey, does index now equal 1? So in a sense, it's kind of like if. Now, if we add the breaks, it turns from an if to an else if. Else if. Okay? So you always see me put these breaks in here. And so if the index happens to be 0, I would like to fill in, I believe, the event name. Now, the event name is a string. It's a string, so... Right, so Ali asks, would we do as many cases are columns for our code? Yep, so if we go look at main here, you're going to have 14 total cases. 15 cases, actually. Isn't that fun? 15 total cases. You can kind of condense your code. I'll show you how I like to do that. So in this case, this is just a string. The event name is just a string. So I will say, oh, what am I missing? I would need a temp swimming event. I need a temp event, right? To store my values. There it is. I need a temp event to store my values. So in here, I'll say that the temp event dot event name is equal to the builder string. And this is how I like to condense it. I'll put it all in one line. I don't know if that bugs any of you guys. But for a lot of these, you can do it like this. If you have to check to see if something is NA, you might want to put it on more than one line. But this will work just fine. So now we'll go to case. Well, before I do that, after my switch statement down here, I think that's where it lines up, right? Yes, it does. I'm going to want to increment that index, and I'm going to want to reset my builder string back to 0, back to empty string. So this moves us to the next field. And this will reset our builder string. So here's what I'll do. Actually, I'm going to kind of copy this, just this little bit here. And I'm actually going to replace everything in here. I know I spent so much time formatting this, but I'm just going to do it real quick. You'll see that I'm a big copy paster because I hate coding. Just kidding. That's a lie. I love to code, but I hate typing. So I always like to copy paste my stuff, kind of condense things down as much as I can, and then I'll go in here and replace everything that I can. Z says, can I clear this instead? Yes, you can. That should work as well. If you'd like, they do the same thing. Thank you so much. It does look nice, doesn't it? You can see all of your cases. It looks like I've got some syntax errors here on the end of it. What did I do to myself here? Let me make sure that I'm still in view. I still am. Let me fix my syntax. Whoops. All right, there we go. So what are our indexes? Well, it happens to be up here. What do I like to do for this? Well, let's grab a snipping tool. If you guys ever want to send me code, I would recommend that you use a snipping tool, and then you can copy this little image to me and send it to me. Or Christine, it makes my life very easy. Instead of just attaching your file. I know a lot of you would love to just attach your file. I hate that. Please send me screenshots. That's my favorite. So this happens to be the event distance. This one happens to be the stroke. Maybe this is just distance, rather. This one happens to be the metric, whatever that is. This one happens to be long course. This one happens to be either men or women. And then this one happens to be the world record, WR. Now there's a few things we have to do in here, right? We have to look at what the types are, right? So here's my thing. Notice that the event distance is an integer. So if I want to convert that, I should add these. I'll have to finish up my notes here a little bit. We've still got a little bit of time here. So if there's anything I want to add to the notes, I might. For example, I might give you some switch statement stuff. I'll also include something about breaks and continues. But to start, let's just talk about converting strings, casting, converting. STOI is string to int. STOF, what is that one? Tell me what STOF is. Tell me what you also think STOD is. String to double, right? That's the D. This one is an easy one too, right? That's the float. Yep, Arceus, you got that right. Exactly. STOI is the int, F is the float, D is the double. So the distance happens to be an int, so I'm going to STOI this. Now, I don't really want to... Look at how nice my code looks, right? Well, in your assignment, there might be an example where the builder string equals NA, right? So you might say, hey, builder string, are you equal to NA? And if so, then we might say this instead. We might say, hey, please be -1 instead. But else, then I'll convert you to an int. Okay? So you might have that somewhere in your code. But now my case statement is all messed up and it doesn't look as pretty as it did. But I guess that we're gonna fare, you know? At least I'm still following this acorn formatting. And everything still looks kind of nice. So the stroke happens to be a string, so I'm not worried about that. The metric happens to be a string, so I'm not worried about that. The long course happens to be a bool. Now, notice how I store it. It's true or false here. True or false. So I can't just read it in like that. I have to do some sort of conversion here. Now, I could do exactly this, an if-else. Has anyone heard of a ternary statement before? Have any of you ever heard of ternaries? Ternaries are a little confusing. We've got some yes, we've got some no's. So I'll show you exactly what the ternary does. Ternary returns, well, ternary, let's say, is like an if-else that returns a value. So I'm going to give you the exact conversion code. Are you ready? This is the exact conversion code. Let's say I want my bool t, something like that, right? So I've got that. And then in here, I'm going to have my string builder string. And my builder string is going to be equal to either true or false. So my code might look like if this builder string is equal to true, then what do I say? I say, hey, t is equal to true. And then I'll say, hey, you know what, else t is equal to false. Something like that. So I'm going to convert that to a ternary. So this is if-else style. Now prepare yourself for the most amazing thing in C++ since if statements. Bool t is equal to this question mark, true or false. All right, so let's dissect this a little bit. Let's just dissect this just a tiny, tiny little bit. This is the ternary style. So what a ternary happens to look like is this. You have the Boolean expression, and then a question mark. I guess I'll put these in little carets, something like that, so you know that's an expression. And then the if true here or the if false here. That's kind of what it does. So you'll notice here that it checks this. And it says, if this is true, it will return true. I guess you could just say this too. Now I'm confusing you guys. We're learning ternaries, okay? This is a little redundant, but this is kind of how ternaries work. So we'll check this, and if this happens to be true, it will return the left-hand side thing here. But if it's false, it will turn this right-hand side thing here. So you can do this with ints, strings, as long as it matches whatever type this is. So Cherry asks, when do you use a ternary? It's when you're going to have something like this. So this code can directly be converted to a ternary. Notice that you have some variable, and in this first, if this is true, you're going to assign t to be something, but in the else statement, you're going to assign t to be something else. So whenever you see code that looks roughly like this, you can convert it directly to one-line ternary here. Yeah, pretty much. Now, that's not always the case, though, Cherry. The only time it's the case is if you're going to be assigning something to t in both cases. If you see t equals true and t equals false in here, then you know that you can use a ternary. So, now that we've talked about ternaries, you don't have to use ternaries if you don't want to. If you don't understand them yet, that's fine. But I'm going to show you here this in ternary. So since this is long course, I'm just going to check to see what the builder string is equal to. I might even be able to just copy paste exactly what I did here. So we'll check to see if it's true. And if it is, then it will return true, else it will return false. So that's a ternary right there. The men and women, this is a character, right? You want to know how I'll do this? I kind of showed some of you guys in the Discord already yesterday. This converts it to a character, right? Now, in some cases, you might have men or you might have women. It's always going to return that first character there, right? In terms of your assignment, it's just M and W in this CSV file, but it will still do the same thing. So just index it at 0. There you go, that assigns the character. And then the world record, this happens to be a float, so we'll STOF that. And we're on the way. So there's a whole thing, pretty much. It's looking a little scary, doesn't it? Yeah, just use the first index. So, like I said, it's looking a little scary, but I hope that you guys are following along. Things will be simpler tomorrow when we start classes, right? This is the review day. So I'm kind of showing you horror code right now. Tomorrow we're going to start from the basics, right? We're going to start learning classes and we're going to go back to the start. Yeah. I kind of expected that, Arceus. I know I'm melting your brain a little bit, but it's only because we have to get caught up. And then tomorrow we're going to start from scratch. We're going to start brand new, very basic code. So notice this. Here is the ending of our for loop, right? So at this point, we read the whole line. And if we look at temp event should be full. So at this point, we can store it. What's the function I call to store it in the vector? Does anyone remember? If I want to store it in the vector, what do I call? See, Cherry asks, do you have any character count restrictions per line? Cherry, I do not have a character count restriction. And everyone else, you remembered it, right? So I'll call pushback. I'll say, hey, let's add that temp event to the vector. There you go. So for every line, I'll just kind of briefly run through it. Well, I'll just briefly run through the whole function. It should be done now. It should be done. So we're going to declare something to return. We're going to open our file. We'll check to see if it's open, and if it is, then we'll declare this temporary string to read stuff, and then we'll grab the header. Then we'll go for the whole file, right? So we'll say, hey, let's get a line, and if we grabbed a line, let's make a builder string, let's make an index, let's make a temp event, and then we're going to go through that whole string. If the character happens to be a comma, or does not happen to be a comma, then we'll add it to the builder string. Else, if it happens to be a comma, or if we're at the end of the string, we'll go into our switch statement here. If we're on the first one, we'll store the name. If we're on the second one, we'll store the distance. Third one, we'll store the stroke, so on. Now, at the end of our switch statement, we'll be sure to increment that index so we know to move on. And we'll reset our builder string so that we can store something brand new in there. Once that for loop's over, we'll then add it to our vector, and then we're done. So we'll test how it works. Yeah, so Lethargy asks, as long as your program is not unreasonably wide, you do not have to keep it to like 75 characters. No, I do not mind. As long as it compiles. I would prefer that your program is not just like one long string. That would really bug me. But if you can follow like kind of roughly what I'm doing here, you can. Now here's what I'll say. This might be a little unreasonable. Let's see. That's not unreasonable. That's not unreasonable necessarily there. But let's say I put it all on one line, and then I'll show you what it looks like, and then I don't really like it like that. So just use your best judgment. I promise I won't like murder your points, if anything. I'd say that's a little unreasonable. Maybe not. Maybe not. But just use your best judgment. I will never mark you, though. Please just make our lives easy. Okay, so I do want to test this before we go. We've only got 5 minutes left. So if you guys have questions about this function, please tell me. I'm going to kind of copy paste something real quick. I just want to print my events to see that everything worked. So I'm actually going to go back to my last semester of teaching, and I'm going to pull out a function. It's nothing terrible, I assure you. I just want to make sure that it's in here somewhere. Where is it? Print event. There it is. I kind of did this same little thing last year. Here it is. So I'm just going to grab it, and I'm going to pull it into here. What does it do? Well, it prints out all of the stuff. I'm going to have to change some of this stuff. I think everything here will be fine. We'll get some compiler errors else. Notice here I use a ternary. Here's a ternary. This is a bool here. If it's true, I will return this string long course. If it's false, I'll return this string short course. So there's another ternary there in action. Ternaries are variables, or they return things for variables. Don't forget to add your prototype. And there we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go through this whole thing, and I'm just going to kind of print it. Here, the plus means concatenation, Z. So I'm going to take this. I did this terribly. So this is a \n. This represents the n line, right? N line is directly equal to this thing. So last year, apparently, I didn't want to do my n lines. So this is an n line. This happens to be one string, right? So I'm taking this string and then I'm concatenating it with this string. Then I'm taking this string and I'm concatenating it with this string. I hope that answers your question. Please let me know if it doesn't. I'm going to check our events.size. I'm going to say, is it 0? Meaning, is it empty? And we'll say, cout, nothing was read. Else, whoops. If we did happen to read something in, let me do a for loop. I'm going to go through everything and print out the events just to make sure that we got it all. I is less than events.size, I++. Then I'll go through here and I will call print event. And I'm going to index our events at I. Okay? So let's go test this, and then we're going to be done for the day. See, TWG asks, about the ternaries. It will check the condition. This happens to be a Boolean, right? This checks the condition. And then it returns something based on the condition. It will either return this if true, or it will return this if false. That's how the ternaries work. This one down here is a little bit redundant because this is already a Boolean. And then I'm returning Booleans based off of the Boolean. But yeah, you're correct, 100%. So let's check for any compiler errors. If you've got any questions about what we did today, now's the time to ask them. This code is going to go up on Web Campus, so you can use it. Tomorrow, we're going to start classes. So I hope you're looking forward to that. But before I get ahead of myself, let me make sure that I do not have any compiler errors. So let's do a nice compile on this. Looks like it worked. So /a.out. Let's do some tests. Let's say I misspell my file and I say swimming abhorrence or something, .csv. Notice it says, hey, the file's not open. Right? When did that happen? Well, it happened here, right? It checked to see if it was open. I typed in the wrong name, so it went here. Also, while I'm at it, let me close my file. Let's never forget to do that. See, I forgot it too. I'm a goober. So since I made a change, I'm going to upload it again, recompile it. Need some Jeopardy music for MOBA Xterm. Now let's say I did spell it right this time and I said, hey, swimming events.csv. And what do you know? It's kind of big, right? I can kind of scroll up here. But look, I read everything in. It all worked, right? Here's our structs. Here's a struct. Women's 100-meter fly. Distance 100. Stroke butterfly. Metric meters. Short course or long course? Short course. This is the women. And the world record happens to be this big number. Okay, so it worked. I'm impressed with myself too. I assure you. Half the time this stuff doesn't work. That's kind of two functions, right? But yeah, this one function here, it reads everything in. Notice here there's a lot of comments, but here's the function. So this is your read file function, essentially. Thank you, thank you. Now the other functions will not be as long as this. Your other 6 functions will be rather short. So I guess we can all be grateful that I did this one kind of for you. But the other 6, use your engineering brains, right? Us computer scientists, we have engineering cards for a reason. So we have to remember that. So do some thinking and check out those other functions. Let me know if you have any questions. I see some of you are already using the Discord. I love that. I will always answer your questions when I can. Office hours are tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And that's all I got for you guys. So unless I'll hang out here for maybe 2-3 minutes to see if anyone wants to type in some questions. But other than that, you're good to go. Thank you for coming to class today. I hope you have a great day. Yeah. Thank you, Z. Thank you, Lethargy. Thank you, Arceus. Thank you, Lil Attacker. Thank you, Saro. Thank you, Coda. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Flyer. While I'm waiting here, I'll go to Web Campus and upload my stuff. Thank you, Josh. Joss. Thank you, Z. You learn more than the semester. I'm so happy to hear that. You make my day. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. All right, let me make my folder here. Thank you, TWG. Thank you, Ali. I love you guys. You're so nice to me. All right, we're gonna upload swimming there for you guys. I'm gonna clean up my notes here. All right, guys. I'm gonna end the stream now. This will go on YouTube. Send me a message if you need anything, and I will catch you later.